But we start with that refereeing decision that was described by some as the worst in the Premier League era. But will the red card shown to Arsenal defender Miles Lewis-Skelly get rescinded? Well, let's get more. We can go live to the Arsenal training ground now and speak to our reporter Gail Davis. Gail, good afternoon to you. Just take us through what we know then about Arsenal. Are they going to appeal this decision?
Yeah, really good afternoon, Joe. We understand that Arsenal have appealed that decision. How the process works is by yesterday at 1 o'clock, they had to let their intention be known, and then they had to gather their evidence by 1 o'clock today to try and get this red card overturned. A red card that left Mikel Arteta fuming. That's all he really said on Saturday evening, but that's all he really needed to say because, as you mentioned, there's been so much noise about it. He allowed other people to do the talking. That incident against Matt Doherty, Michael Oliver sent him off straight red. In terms of that evidence, there's been a bit of a precedent early on in the season, end of September. If you think about Bruno Fernandes's challenge, that was on James Maddison when United lost 3-0. Very, very similar situation, and people have pointed to that as maybe a way that will be looked at in terms of that was overturned, and Arsenal certainly hoping to have their player back because it's a huge game on Sunday for Arsenal against Manchester City, and then it's the second leg of the Carabao Cup he could potentially miss as well. And this is a player who's having a breakthrough season for the club. I mean, good news for Arsenal is I watched him train a little bit earlier, and Ricardo Calafiori, obviously he's back fit, scored the winner against Wolves on the weekend. So they do have cover, but he's having such a good season, and their squad is skinny at the moment because there are a number of injuries, so they'll desperately want their best players. We watched him train this morning. Obviously, he can play in that Champions League game against Girona tomorrow night. Really big.
For Arsenal, it was so nearly extremely nervy for them because they went down to 10 men in that game. And I think if you cut a montage of all the commentators who were working on that game around the world, the tone of surprise in their voice when that was given as a red card sort of tells its own story there, although PGMOL have said that they support the decision.
Of course they will. You know what I mean? We're talking about an organisation who, for me, it's a dangerous mix. You know what I was going to say, Kels, with this? When that happened, Kels, I said, that's a good yellow to take, you know what I mean? Because when you look at it, he's gone in sideways. It's cynical, right? It's cynical. He's gone in sideways, and yes, his boot is caught there. That for me is a yellow card. I couldn't understand it, and like you said, in unison, all the commentators around the world went, "What? Oh, he's been sent off." People thought that he got a yellow before, right? Now, if he got a yellow before, you probably wouldn't be able to argue. But for that to be a red card is absolutely ludicrous.
And it's definitely worth talking about. Before we do that, though, it's also worth reflecting on what PGMOL have said, because Michael Oliver has been subject to some really awful online abuse, and PGMOL have spoken out in support of that, saying they're appalled by the threats and abuse. No official should be subject to any form of abuse, let alone the abhorrent attacks aimed at Michael and his family over the past 24 hours. They've put the police in touch with that. They are investigating it. Of course, the support for Michael Oliver, and as they say, sadly, it's not the first time a match official has been forced to deal with threats in recent times. This is not about a personal attack on Michael Oliver, but and we would unilaterally condemn any kind of abuse, let alone the kind of abuse that him and his family have been getting for that. But that doesn't mean that we can't look at the decision.
Thank you, and that's where it's come from. What we've seen here is a referee that's made the kind of mistake that people have gone, no, especially with Arsenal. Arsenal fans have got every right to feel, why are we still getting Michael Oliver on our games? That's 8 sending-offs that Arsenal have had, and a couple of them you have to think to yourself, probably will never see those sending-offs again.
You can't talk about conspiracy.
You can't go down that route about
No. Let me finish. The fact is, why can't you go down that route? It's there facts for everyone to see.
On that
you know what? He's had 47 games to see. He's not sent off one player.
How many of those Arsenal red cards were red cards?
Yeah, but the thing is that.
But that's relevant because
When you said one red card,
you can look at the Lewis.
I don't think
you can look at
Lewis
Miles
Skelly
Lewis
wasn't
Skelly
one.
and you can say right, fine.
I think you go
yellow.
back to Martinelli against Wolves. He got booked in the same incident.
But again, that was the two yellows, was it?
You look at Declan Rice's one. You look at Saliba's one.
But they were all by the letter of the law, correct?
What
red
I'll say
cards.
about this game, though, is when you look specifically at this game, because that point there is a point that I think a lot of Arsenal fan base will really home into. But if you look at the game itself, you look at the Gomez decision, you look at the Lewis Skelly decision, and it's like even in the same game, we're not having any parity in anything that's going on. And I think that is the major issue. And we can talk about, you know, the technology that's been brought in. There is an issue with officiating. And I think it's been brewing for so long now that there's just this real resentment towards everything that happens. We've seen...
Do you think there's less understanding because there is the assistance of VAR now? Do you think that we're less likely to say, do you know what, the ref either hasn't seen it or hasn't seen it properly, or he's missed it, or he's made a...
But this is the issue.
So now,
so a wise man once said
excuse is
that
gone.
VAR is like CCTV. It's like, it's black and white, it just tells you what happened. So when you go to it and you see it and it's like, well, why is this the decision? And then it becomes, it's the left.
And of course, a big story this window involves Arsenal and their need to sign a striker, if there is a need, because Mikel Arteta did get quite tetchy with our colleague Jamie Weir, didn't he, when he was asked that question a couple of days ago. Maybe misunderstood what the question was. But what is the latest on Arsenal's search for a striker?
Well, I think Mikel Arteta said pretty clearly in that press conference, and I think what Jamie Weir did a fantastic job in getting him to confirm is they want to do business in this window. But Arteta also said it's not up to them solely. You know, it's such a difficult window to make big moves happen. If you're Arsenal, of course, Mikel Arteta is fully aware they need another forward option. Of course, losing Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Jesus to injury leaves them short. Also think when you look at the Wolves game on the weekend, you don't want to pick on Kai Havertz because it feels like we talk about him every week, but he is missing that clinical touch at the moment. He missed 2 or 3 opportunities against Wolves that you just think a typical number 9 with that clinical nature would finish. And they almost did drop points against Wolves. Wolves did have their chances, and Arsenal were down to 10 men for a large portion of that game, and that game could have seen them out of the title race, with Liverpool winning again on the weekend. So I think Arteta said it himself, of course they want to do business before deadline day, but it's very difficult to do, and it's not as easy as just Arsenal want a striker, let's sign one.
Yeah, and it's difficult to find number 9 specifically, isn't it? So, I mean, is it possible that they could bring in a forward who isn't a number 9, someone who can maybe play across the front line but not an out-and-out number 9?